Sky Mobile Transfer Show, where we debate the latest deals, rumours and links taking place across the window. It's deadline day, and what a deadline day it is. So we are doing a special live stream for the next hour to see in deadline day. I am joined by Doogie Critchley and the one and only Carl Anka. How are we doing, boys?
Oh, very good, very good. What a thrilling transfer window and what a thrilling deadline day so far. I cannot wait for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Carl, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, yeah, how are you wrapping your head around all of this?
This is my second coffee, and I'll probably have a couple more when this window is closed. So, over-caffeinated, loads of questions, only a limited amount of answers, but let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Over-caffeinated, I think, is a good way to describe the transfer window in general. I mean, let's kick off with Marc Guehi, because it's very much active at the moment. We've seen reports from Sky Sports' Rob Dorset that Igor Julio, who would effectively have been Marc Guehi's replacement at Crystal Palace at the last minute, now choosing to go West Ham. As things stand, no indication that this means that the Guehi deal to Liverpool is off, though, you know, nothing's been, you know, he's still doing his medical. So, yeah, pretty crazy stuff going into the last 2 hours of the transfer window. I mean, on Guehi, Carl, I mean, what does this transfer mean for Liverpool? And also, I guess, if they can't get in a top quality replacement, what does this mean for Palace?
I mean, for Liverpool, it means they get cover at centre-back, which is going to be really, really important. I think if you look at their bevy of attacking options and how those attackers, and I include the fullbacks in this, how they want to play, that does put a undue amount of stress on your centre-backs. If you look at how Jeremy Frimpong in particular wants to really get forward down that right-hand side, that means Konate has to marshal quite a lot of space as your right centre-back. That changed a little bit when it's Szoboszlai there, which I think is really interesting. But there is this idea that if Konate got injured, they'd need someone to step up, and depending on your viewpoint of Joe Gomez, you might want one extra person. When that one extra person is a player of Marc Guehi's quality, big tick there. Also the fact that Guehi is, he's played left-sided centre-back for the majority of his career, did very, very well there for England at Euro 2024 as well. Means in the times where, perhaps, that's me knocking wood, in the times where Virgil van Dijk wants to have a rest, or perhaps is even injured, Guehi can step into that role. So for Liverpool, I think that makes a lot of sense. For Crystal Palace, I'm not quite sure. What do you think about this one, Dougie?
Well, it's a difficult one. I think they obviously didn't want to lose Guehi, but there's obviously the 1 year left on his deal, so they wanted to get a fee rather than lose him for free next year. It has gone on and on, whereas last week they got Yeremy Pino in as Eberechi Eze's replacement. I'm surprised that they maybe didn't make a move for a more established centre-back earlier on in the window. It feels like they have left it slightly late. I was speaking to a Crystal Palace fan on an X Space at lunchtime today when we spoke to a representative of every Premier League club, and he said, frankly, it's weird that we're even trying to sign a Brighton player. So I don't think this guy's maybe too disappointed. But from a Palace perspective, it just feels like after all the good work of last season, Ole Glasner has made perfectly clear throughout this window that he wanted more additions and wanted to kick on. And again, they've left it pretty late in the window. So let's see whether they do manage to sign a replacement. I think at this stage, especially given his performance against Aston Villa yesterday, most Palace fans will probably just rather keep Guehi for a year and lose him for free, because ultimately they're not the club's accountants. But it does feel like this will be the big talking point for the next 2 hours, because most deals, and there's been loads of them, have been wrapped up.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, yeah, given, like you say, Ole Glasner's comments about Marc Guehi potentially worrying times. Doogie is going to be monitoring the chat, by the way, and monitoring the latest goings on on deadline day. So yeah, get in the chat, get involved. I think we've got a poll up as well, so we'll be seeing the results of that very shortly. Like you say, Doogs, I mean, so many transfers that have been wrapped up or wrapping up on deadline day today. I mean, we may as well stick on Liverpool. Alexander Isak finally done. I mean, yeah, what do you make of this? And also Newcastle getting in, you know, their replacements as well.
Well, I think that's quite crucial, because I think a lot of fans earlier in the summer were sort of taking the mickey out of Newcastle and their inability to land these top targets, whether it was João Pedro or Ugo Ekitike or even Liam Delap. It just felt like name after name was leaking to the media and the public, and it was getting a little bit embarrassing. Whereas middle of last week, was it about Thursday time, the sort of bomber drops that Nick Woltemade has been signed from Stuttgart. I think a lot of people who haven't watched a lot of Bundesliga football sort of said, Nick who? But this is a guy who had a phenomenal year for Stuttgart last year, and it was his first real top season, I think it's worth saying, in a top 5 league. He signed on a free the previous summer from Werder Bremen. He then went to the under-21 Euros and really excelled there too. And this is a really fascinating profile in that he's 6'6", he's not particularly quick, but every stereotype you imagine from a 6'6" player, he doesn't have. He's not some big lump up front. He's got the most velvet touch. He's absolutely amazing in terms of his awareness. He can play as a number 10 as well. So that's potentially pretty exciting. Wissa feels like the slightly more strange one, but then it was so long and protracted that, and he is a more different profile from someone like Jorgen Strand Larsen as well, and had such a phenomenal year at Brentford last year, that potentially felt like one they had to get done today. £55 million for someone who's about to turn 29 with 1 year left on his contract does feel like a lot, but I think it's got to a situation where it's needs must. So in terms of Newcastle incomings, whilst I think they can be obviously pretty devastated about the way that Alexander Isak conducted himself, I think they can be pretty pleased to end up with Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak out and Woltemade and Wissa in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alexander Isak, of course, has fetched a British transfer record fee. But, I mean, Carl, what do you make of this? Do you think they've overspent on Woltemade and Wissa? Do you think does that take the shine off the fact that they have, offloaded a huge talent, a huge, one of the best strikers in the world, but for a huge fee? Like, what do you make of it?
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And going into this window, when we first heard news that Liverpool would be interested in Alexander Isak, it became very, very clear that Newcastle would be willing to do business if, one, Isak would go for a record fee, so the British record, and two, they could get their replacements in. Those two criteria have been met. Are those replacements the plus ones, the top of those lists, the people they wanted in? Perhaps not. They've got two very good players. I think Wissa being Premier League proven is something we're seeing a lot more this transfer window. A lot of the top 6 usurpers are buying from lower in the league because they want to get players who perhaps need a shorter onboarding period. Just, the intensity of this league, let's get this done. Woltemade is, like you say, we're seeing big lads that make fun of the notion of good touch for a big lad, right? These are big men with good first touches. They've got hold-up play and link-up play in a way that you'd expect from a player who's 5'9". I mean, Isak is perhaps a stunning example of that. He's really tall, but he dribbles like he's really short. I'm sorry, I can't say that in a more intelligent way. That's just how it is. So you've got that. So they've got two interesting options. I think the fact that Wissa is the one who can hit the ground running would really, really help. So yeah, if you're Newcastle, perhaps it's not the ideal transfer window, but you have achieved what your higher-ups wanted to achieve. And I think the squad is in a good place for what they need to do. Some question marks over how they'll break down deep defences, but we'll deal with that later on. For now, the squad is good.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly, got covering in right wing, left wing, at the back as well now. They've covered a lot of bases, and like you say with Yoane Wissa, Premier League proven, 19 goals last season. I think only Erling Haaland beat him for non-penalty expected goals. So in terms of a guarantee of goals, if Wissa's your Callum Wilson replacement, then you do have one of the best poachers in Europe on your hands. Obviously, their age and contract length it means that is it feels like an overpay, doesn't it? But if Wissa's goals mean that Newcastle secure Champions League football again next season, then they probably will not care about that. Let's move on to one of the other big deals of the day. Seny Lamons to Manchester United. Carl, I mean, it looked touch and go whether it would be Lamons or Emi Martinez. I mean, what can you tell us about this deal, and what can you tell us about Lamons?
I mean, the first thing I'll tell you is thank you for correcting me. I've been calling him Seny Lamons for the last 2 weeks.
So was I as well earlier today.
So could you repeat that one more time?
Lamons? I mean, I might have it wrong.
Seny Lamons, please use the live chat if we're saying this wrong. If you've got greater experience of Belgian football for us, please, we're always here to learn. What we can say is this is a goalkeeper who is regarded as one of the best under-25 goalkeepers in Europe. If we look at what is referred to as the top 7 or the top 8 leagues in Europe, so that's your traditional top 5, then you can include the Netherlands, Belgium, and then Portugal. His ex-got, shall we say, so the post-shot save metric. This is a metric that I can very, very quickly explained to you as if a shot happens and the goalkeeper makes the save, if you swapped out that goalkeeper with what is referred to as an average goalkeeper, would that average goalkeeper make the save or not? And Lamans' ratio to that is among the top 5 in Europe, in Europe's top 8 leagues. Sorry, loads of stats there. Bing, bang, boom, boom. In short, what I'm telling you is this man makes a lot of saves. And he makes a lot of saves in a way that I can only really describe as baby David De Gea. So he's got the octopus limbs thing, right? He's very good at unfurling his legs and doing what, if you play cricket at all, known as the long barrier technique or the blocking technique. So where you sort of turn your right knee in to create this sort of barrier to do that. He's very good at jutting a leg towards the near post if someone tries to shoot a near post. Something that Andre Onana, unfortunately, has had some problems with in Manchester United so far. So in terms of team is having a shot on goal, Le Mans for Royal Antwerp last season was very, very good at stopping those. Then we get into the other more chewy nougat bits of goalkeeping, high claims, penalty saving. Is he good on good with set piece defending and all of that? Now, I've been speaking to the Athletics goalkeeping consultant, Matt Podolski, and he has helped me write a brilliant piece that will hopefully be up on the website very soon. And he believes Le Mans has good aggression on high claims. We've all got our eyebrows looking at the statistics around these high claims. There might be something. There might be a gremlin in the code there. So while the numbers look quite good in terms of these high claims and for crosses and set pieces, the eye test will tell you he's brave, but perhaps sometimes overexerts himself. Now, this is something that might be a worry. I'm sorry if you're United fan going, hang on, no, that's not good.
That's not what we wanted, yeah.
He makes the leap. He does not make the leap and grab it in the same way that, say, David Raya does, or in the same way that Emi Martinez does at Aston Villa. That's probably obvious because those two are slightly more mature and also Premier League proven, and they've dealt with things right now. If you were to look at Le Mans compared to these other two goalkeepers as well, to borrow a term from my aunt, you'd be like, he needs thickening out a little bit. Probably needs to spend a little more time in the gym, probably needs a little bit more chicken soup. However, in terms of raw capabilities, he looks good. The initial plan or noise that we heard from Manchester United was that goalkeeper was a stretch goal this summer, that they weren't going to go in the market for a goalkeeper unless one of Andre Onana or Altay Bayindir was to be sold. However, it seems as if the situation changed quite quickly after the defeat to Arsenal after match day 1. Le Mans, to my mind, was not initially put on their scouting shortlist or target list to be the number 1 from day 1, but perhaps to be a number 2 who could push Andre Onana further than Bayindir.
Do you think that's changed now? Do you think Le Mans comes in at United and is number 1 straight away, given the goalkeeping problems we've seen in the early weeks?
Given that United's first match out the international break is a Manchester derby, perhaps not. I think if you are Le Mans, Bayindir, even Tom Heaton, your responsibility this season is to push Onana to the very limit. So if Onana gets injured or if Onana has a dip in form, you can immediately step in. And also, this is an AFCON year. Onana will miss 2 or 3 games of this season because he's going to be away with Cameroon. And, well, there's no such thing as an AFCON favourite. But Cameroon would expect to get to the latter stages of that tournament, which could prolong things. So Le Mans will be coming in knowing he will hopefully play a decent percentage of games. But perhaps if he has a decent run of form and Amarin chooses to make a change, he could be playing games as soon as the end of the month, perhaps, I think. What do you think about this one, Dougie?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I was a little bit concerned about the rumours linking you with Emi Martinez, just because I think he's turning 33 this week. Again, in terms of the short term, who do I back to have a more instant impact at Man United? Who do I expect to be a better leader this season? Who do I expect to be able to organise better from set pieces? Probably Emi Martinez. But in terms of a long-term investment, this feels like a really shrewd bet, basically, on a player that's coming off a brilliant season. And now some people will say, look what happened with Rasmus Højlund. The difference is there that you spent, £70 million on Rasmus Højlund. Lamans is arriving for around 20 million euros. So in terms of a cheap bet on someone that does have pedigree, if not in a top 5 league, let's say, and seems to have enormous promise, I think it seems really sensible. Emi Martinez, yes, there's that leadership sort of factor for sure, but he's having, 1-2 years at the top, and then you're looking to replace the goalkeeping situation as well. If Lamans works out, let's see. But it could be for the next 10 years, which is really, really exciting. Just quickly on some stuff in the chat. So we've asked the chat what has been the biggest and best deal of deadline day so far. Isak to Liverpool is coming out on top. Then Guehi to Liverpool, which does have some doubts around it at the moment. And Jurgen Klopp memes, who must have had great material when Jurgen Klopp was in the league, says they need Marc Guehi updates urgently. Does Palace have a replacement? And I can go to my emails and see that Rob Dorset, Sky's football correspondent, has said that Crystal Palace have a long-term interest in AC Milan centre-back Stranja Pavlovic, but they are now actively exploring a deal for Pavlovic. You imagine that if they manage to bring in Pavlovic, Marc Guehi's deal to Liverpool would be soothed, let's say. Apparently AC Milan are also looking at Manuel Akanji, but there's been reports in the last few hours all over the internet that Inter Milan are looking at Manuel Akanji, and they're also looking at Liverpool's Joe Gomez. It doesn't feel like Joe Gomez, I would guess, would be moving this window, especially with Marc Guehi's future up in the air. So
Milan could potentially be the losers in this love triangle of
Milan could end up without Pavlovic, without Gomez, and without Akanji, I suppose. So it could be rough for them. But yeah, they've had a promising window aside from that. Great midfield rebuild.
Yeah. Interesting times at Milan. Let us know your thoughts about Cedi Lemons if you're a Man United fan. Are you happy with the deal? Would you have preferred Emi Martinez? If so, why? And yeah, Liverpool fans, get us with more of your thoughts about Isak and Guehi as that situation unfolds. I guess we're on the subject of goalkeepers now. Gianluigi Donnarumma, his move to Man City expected to go through before the deadline. I mean, Doogie, while we're on the subject, what do you make of this one? Again, a former Milan keeper, highly coveted, but maybe a strange fit for Man City?
I think slightly. I mean, Donnarumma is 26, and I really, really like him as a goalkeeper. He's been playing 10 senior seasons now already. That's incredible experience. He's approaching 100 caps for Italy. He's been player of a tournament at a winning Euros, dominating a penalty shootout, as we all remember, back in 2021. The pain lives on. But in terms of a fit for Man City, who've already spent £30 million or so on James Trafford, I find it a little bit confusing, if I'm totally honest, because yes, this is a brilliant shot stopper. Anyone who watched any part of the Champions League last year could have seen that. But he does have some issues with balls at his feet. It was a few years ago that he kind of cost PSG in a Champions League tie against Real Madrid. He's not a natural ball-playing goalkeeper. And so to spend over £50 million, £55 million on two goalkeepers this summer, it just feels like something that wouldn't have happened to Man City maybe 4 or 5 years ago when their business felt way more streamlined and effective and efficient. I am slightly confused by it, especially given the fact that at right back, they're playing Matheus Nunes or Rico Lewis seemingly for the entire season, which again feels like a massive hole in their defence. So I'd have potentially not invested in Donnarumma or gone for Donnarumma earlier in the window and not signed Trafford and instead looked to strengthen at right back because it does feel like one of their key issues this season.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Trafford's had a decent start as well, hasn't he, to his Man City career? I think he's already saved 2 post-shot expected goals, despite conceding 4 in total. A couple of great saves against Brighton on the weekend. Carl, I mean, so many transfers going on today, and it's been a pretty active final week of the window as well. Has there been a particular transfer or a particular saga in the last week that's particularly caught your eye? I mean, away from Isak, the obvious answer,
a particular saga. Can I strike a theme with you?
Okay, yeah.
I love it.
I'm a little bit confused by the business Aston Villa are doing right now.
Okay, yeah.
So, having watched Unai Emery teams for a little bit, we know Unai Emery likes to build functional teams, shall we say, rather than teams that are fun. Having watched Villa yesterday against Crystal Palace, there was a little bit about them that felt perhaps a little flat, or the very pronounced build-up patterns that Emery likes to build at his team. You know exactly where Aston Villa want to put the ball, when the ball's at the goalkeeper's feet. It goes that way, goes that way, goes that way, and if it can't go that way, it goes that way, etc., etc., etc. And it seems like that's been figured out to some extent by opposition teams and coaches, because this is the Premier League. You can't have a secret for more than 4 games because someone's going to find it, be there at a football club or be there on Twitter just making threads. So it seems like this team needs a refresh, it needs a reboot, and yes, we do know Aston Villa have huge PSR constraints. I mean, after the January transfer window last season, I think their wage to turnover ratio was 96%, which is just mind-boggling if you're anyone old enough to remember what the term doing a Leeds means and the wages involved in doing a Leeds. So to be 96 was a little bit odd. So they had to be They had to be smarter than everyone else in how they were going to do this rebuild. They had to look at undervalued assets and perhaps go for cheaper deals. And what it seems to be for me, the thing that's confusing me is that Aston Villa are once again looking at getting players north of 26 years of age who ideally want to hit the ground running. And you're going, okay, you're signing good players, but how does this make your team or squad better than what it currently was? And how does this also help you reduce a wage bill that you do need to reduce because you're playing this season in Europa League compared to playing in the Champions League? So going out for Victor Lindelof, okay, kind of makes sense. Get a centre-back with Premier League experience on the free, great. But also I'm pulling a face. I'm sorry, I can't really explain this face I'm pulling. Then you get into this current negotiation with Jadon Sancho, which is the boom-bust potential there is huge. I think Aston Villa's collection of fullbacks could, in theory, suit Jadon Sancho. And I think the way Emery likes to direct play with automatism after automatism after automatism might help Sancho. And also, if for some reason, if Emery goes to Sancho, you're the one who doesn't necessarily have to pay attention to these instructions in the final third, you could have a sort of Grealish at Everton style situation. However, with Sancho, I don't know. Yeah. And then you've got Harvey Elliott, who should be great. Why am I pausing? And this is what I feel about Aston Villa. There are so many things in here that make sense in isolation, They make signings that make sense in isolation, separate from each other. But when you connect it all up, you're going, how is this going to take this team from 6th back into the top 5? What are you making Aston Villa's business?
I think it's a little bit confusing as well. I think Jadon Sancho, there's reports that they're paying 80% of his wages, and I think he's had a pay decrease. At least that was what the reports were earlier, because you guys missed out on the Champions League for another season. But it was still looking like it was going to be about £160,000 per week, which would be the highest earner at Aston Villa, even with that decrease. So it does feel like an enormous bet on a player that was, I think, fine for Chelsea, but no better than fine, and who has had issues off the pitch and in terms of his attitude and in terms of some sort of quite unsavoury Instagram and social media presence, let's say, from Man United. So I don't think any Man United fans are complaining that Jadon Sancho is leaving, and I don't think any Aston Villa fans are delighted, especially when you look at some of the business done around the window. Even today with backward going, we've seen the likes of Malik Fofana linked with moves this summer, although it looks like he's staying at Lyon. There's so much exciting talent. We see all Ben Seguir go to Bayer Leverkusen. There are so many exciting young talents that you can go and sign. And yes, there's no fee involved for Jadon Sancho, but it will still, I think, cost over £8 million to get Sancho for an entire year.
That's a big bet.
Which is a big bet on a player that has not really delivered in English football. So I'm confused by that. And I'm kind of with Carl. I think they need more difference makers. Harvey Elliott, again, I really like him as a player, but is he enough of a change from the current players that they've currently got? I'm not so sure either.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like Elliott's the one that I'm a big fan of personally.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one that you can go, this is good, and I like this one. And the other ones you're like, Again, pulling a face.
I mean, with Jadon Sancho, this will be his third loan since joining Man United back in 2021. I don't think he's put up double figures for goals in a league season since 2020, when he was 19 for most of the season at Dortmund, when he was considered one of the 2 or 3 best young prospects in all of Europe. Carl, what do you think's gone wrong for him over the years? Of course, we saw him turn down a move to Roma as well earlier in the summer.
For the interest of brevity, let's keep this strictly to on the field. Jadon Sancho, in the lead up to Euro 2020, where it looked as if he was going, he's in the England squad, he's not really getting any game time, and loads of German press is going, why is Sancho not getting any game time? And Southgate is not doing really anything there. And you're thinking, is it perhaps to do with defensive output? Or is it perhaps to do with anything other than that? And then he gets signed by Manchester United. He's immediately in the squad for the Ukraine game. And I'm doing a joke. One of the things that was very obvious about Sancho at his first stint at Dortmund was, even though he played on the right wing, he is not a chalk on your boots, burst past the fullback, whip in the cross. He is what is colloquially termed as a half space boy. He wants to, he facilitates play. He's a sort of secondary playmaker who likes to attack the space between the fullback and your centre back and makes very, very smart decisions. He's not the biggest, he's not the quickest, but his intuitive improvisation, or he's just the fastest thinker in the room. Now, to be the fastest thinker in the room, you probably have to be in a good mood. You probably have to sleep well, eat well, train well, and be really confident. And that was possible at Dortmund. Was also there at Dortmund was overlapping fullbacks. You know, he was playing with Hakimi at right back, and when Hakimi left, he was playing with Thomas Meunier, a fantastic fullback from Belgium who used to be a postman. And then when he gets shifted over to left, he was also playing with left backs who outstripped, really, really worked on that overlapping run, because Sancho cannot beat most fullbacks on a 1v1 dribble. You can do a lot of nutmegs and do a trick, but he does often need that distracting run. And if that distracting run doesn't work, he at least has the outball. He goes to Manchester United, and the right back, you go from your right backs being Hakimi and Thomas Meunier to your right back being Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Very, very, very, very different situation. And there is a interview Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did with Gary Neville and Roy Keane several years after he left the Manchester United job, where he explained, not too long after Sancho arrived, Sancho made it clear that he preferred playing on the left now rather than playing on the right. I think that might have had something to do with the fact that United had better overlapping left backs at the time rather than right backs. Sancho goes back to Dortmund. He's playing on the right-hand side again. Is his game any different? Not really. Still very much half space, very much working with those fullbacks that overlap. And I think this is always going to be an issue for Sancho in England, is can he, the environment and the things needed for him to get his game off are overlapping fullbacks in particular. You want to have a team that ideally can win the ball quite high up the field, which I think there's 2 or 3 players at Aston Villa who ideally want to win the ball high up the field and are best when they win the ball high up the field. I think Morgan Rogers has a sort of young Dele Alli-esque way of playing at number 10 that was best suited for a team that can really keep the ball high up the field and win the ball high up the field, so you can have loads of third-man runs there. So, in short, Jadon Sancho's lack of explosive pace probably meant he was misdiagnosed by 2 or 3 people as he was coming over to England. The fact there were no overlapping fullbacks on the right at Manchester United caused him to play on the left-hand side for a bit. I think United's form that season when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer leaves and Ralf Rangnick takes over probably led to a dip in confidence. Then you have the Erik ten Hag situation. And there's also the good and plus effect of Bruno Fernandes, which is there's been more than one attacking midfield player who's turned up at Manchester United post-2020 and gone, I want to get into central areas. And he's like, well, you're not, because Bruno Fernandes is there and he's never injured and he's going to play forever. So that probably, I mean, ideally, it would have been Fernandes and Sancho doing loads of interplay in the half spaces, but it never quite came up. So that's what happened there. At Chelsea, like Dougie said, fine. You know, there was an array of fullbacks who could offer him a little bit more. And he was okay in the Conference League, I want to say. But he's not, unfortunately, he's not really been a player to grab games by the scruff of the neck in English football. He can garnish games, but I'm not sure if you're paying a player north of £150,000 a week, you don't really want them to garnish, you want them to dominate.
Yeah, well, for sure. And you look at the fullbacks that Aston Villa have got on their books, you know, it's sort of Matty Cash at right back, who most Villa fans have been calling to replace for a number of years. Ian Maatsen might work quite well at left back, but
I mean, they've played together before.
For
Yes,
sure.
they have.
But they also prefer Luca Dean, who's got brilliant delivery, but is not a explosive fullback. So there's going to be, it's going to be crucial that he builds relationships. I think the good thing from an Aston Villa perspective is that if Jadon Sancho is taking one of those positions, probably on the left-hand side, Morgan Rogers is as essential as possible, who I thought had a really underrated year last year. I know he got loads of credit as well, but he was phenomenal in the Champions League as well, really instantly stepped up to that level. And if it wasn't for sort of a Jude Bellingham and even a Cole Palmer, you'd be like, you know, England should base around their team around Morgan Rogers. He was really that exciting.
Yeah, interesting times for Aston Villa. Let us know your thoughts about Aston Villa's window in the comments. We also have a new poll out about who has won the transfer window, so get involved with that. I mean, we may as well get onto that subject now, right? I mean, is it hard to look past Liverpool at this point if the Guehi deal gets over the line? Or do you think Arsenal or someone further down the table? We've seen Nottingham Forest be very active recently as well.
The first time you had me here, I picked Everton, didn't I? I picked Everton.
Yeah.
This is before, and I said...
I wasn't sure whether you were just trying to pick out obscure...
No, I wasn't trying to be clever. I cited Ian Graham, the former recruitment genio at Liverpool, his book, How to Win the Premier League, which I would recommend to anyone who wants to look into data and recruitment. So his argument was it's only really a successful transfer if that player plays half of your Premier League minutes 2 years down the line, which completely cabalks this question of who wins the Premier League, because the answer should be, let's see in 2 years. However, if you're looking at players that are likely to still be there in 2 years, I think Liverpool have ticked a lot of boxes. I think they said they skipped leg day because they just went all front forward there. I know a lot of people say it's a very greedy front line there. It's a bevy of attacking riches. I am really interested to see how this midfield works to sort of help and also cover up the defensive frailties of that front three, front four. Florian Wirtz, who I'm a really big fan of, hasn't really struck it off in England just yet. 2 or 3 nice touches and really good ability to make the ball stick in places where you can't really make the ball stick. But I thought against Arsenal in particular, he wasn't aggressive enough for me, both on and off the ball. Szoboszlai's ended up being sort of the unsung hero. And I mean, he might end up playing a little bit more minutes at right back until they can all figure this out. So for me, I said Everton last time, so I'm going to stick with Everton. But yeah, Liverpool as a honourable mention.
Yeah, fair enough. And what have you made of Jack Grealish? Because I think since we last spoke, Jack Grealish has, he's back, exploded again.
He's back. he just seems really happy. I think you look at his social media, you look at his Instagram, you look at the way he's interacting with Liverpool fans. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Fans in Liverpool is what I meant to say. The way he's interacting with the Everton fans, it looks nice. It looks like he has a degree of attacking freedom that was not present at Manchester City. It looks like he's relishing that. We know Grealish is he likes a pint, but he also likes to train very hard when it's time to work. And that seems to have worked well with David Moyes as well. And also, I mean, this is an Everton team that under Sean Dyche last season had very few players that could beat a man 1v1. And now they've got 3, which sometimes is enough. I think they're going to be comfortably in the Premier League's middle class come the end of the season. What are you making of Everton? What are you making of Grealish?
I think it's so fun to watch him, isn't it? He just looks so free once again. I mean, one of the assists was like a sort of 2-yard leg.
Oh yeah, of course.
But still, like to see him with this level of freedom is just so exciting already. And Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, I loved his goal on the weekend as well. It does look like they've had a brilliant window because it was only in sort of maybe the first week of July. They seem to have about 15 players on their books after releasing the older generation, the Calvert-Lewins and the Doucourés, who have performed for Everton in fits and starts in the past. But it does seem like a much more complete squad than in previous years as well. I'm excited to see how Tieno Barry does when he eventually probably becomes the first choice, I would probably say, over Beto, who Moyes has had some sort of not run-ins with, but has asked for more basically at various points. So Everton feel like they're in a brilliant position, and every report that you hear of anyone that's been to their new stadium as well says it's an absolute amphitheatre and the noise builds really effectively and the atmosphere is just absolutely brilliant. So exciting stuff. I've seen photos all over social media of Man City's İlkay Gündoğan holding up a Galatasaray shirt. So he is off to Galatasaray by the looks of things, who have also signed Leroy Sané and Victor Osimhen as well. So quite a window for Galatasaray. But back to your question about who's won the window. I mean, I did a big speech about Arsenal last week on the lowdown, but it's slightly biased, but I think Sunderland have to be in the mix.
Here we go.
To be honest, it was only, what were we, half an hour in and I managed to get them in. To be 4th in the Championship and closer to 17th than the top 2, and then scrape into the playoff final against Sheffield United, scrape into the Premier League in a game that really could have got away from Sunderland at various points. In May, I didn't really know what to expect, but yet that Granit Xhaka signing seems to have encouraged so many other players from Champions League clubs, whether it's Nordi Mukiele, whether it's today Brian Brobby and Lucharel Gertruida signing from RB Leipzig. That's such a high calibre of player. And it feels like Sunderland have had a rampant window. There's, I think, 12 or 13 players signed. I've been surprised there hasn't been more outgoings. But it's a seriously competitive squad now, and it's got a very decent chance of survival now, which, given how late we qualified for the Premier League, for want of a better word, or got back into it, you're always worried about the side that wins the playoff final because they do have that little less time, especially because Leeds and Burnley knew they were up for a number of weeks. So I'm delighted with Sunderland's business so far. Yeah,
I mean, 2 wins from 3 is seriously impressive. And like you say, Gertruida and Brobby arriving today. I mean, Brobby last season very quiet for Ajax, but the season before 18 goals in the Eredivisie. In that same season, Gertruida, when he was at Feyenoord under Arne Slot, 8 goals from right back. I mean, Dukes. Yeah, are you now more confident than not that Sunderland will pull off the seemingly impossible?
Well, the only thing is everyone looks pretty competitive this year. There doesn't really feel like there's a sort of Premier League dunce, which there has been in the last few years. I think I said before a ball was kicked that I backed every side to get over 20 points this year, which in previous years wouldn't have been that crazy, but in the last couple, that's just not happened. Leeds look pretty competitive. I think Burnley signing Florentino Luis today as well to play alongside Ugochukwu in midfield. That feels like a really competitive midfield. think you're probably most worried for Wolves right now. I mean, West Ham got a massive win yesterday, but a lot of late goals in that. And Nottingham Forest have obviously been up and down in terms of sort of inter-club morale, let's say, in the last few weeks as well. But yeah, I'd be very disappointed if Sunderland went straight back down.
Okay.
It's not totally impossible, of course. I think we'll be in that area between 15th and 20th, and we did lose to Burnley a few weeks ago. So let's not, run before we can walk, as it were. And we scraped past Brentford on the weekend with a last-minute goal. So it's not like we're walking the league this year. And there's a lot of new relationships to build and develop. But I think the recruitment team has given us every chance.
I'm really excited to see how Robbie manages in the Premier League. This is a player who's been linked to a number of clubs in the Premier League for the last 3 or 4 years, heavily linked to Manchester United during Eric Ten Hag's time, also linked to West Ham United as well. The thing about him, one, he's hilarious, so I can't wait to see him talk to English media, because he will always crack a joke and always crack it. He's got a lovely smile. And two, he's just not in keeping with what we're seeing with strikers right now. We're seeing strikers get increasingly taller, and we're always talking about how these strikers have great velvety touches for 6'1", 6'2", 6'6" strikers, whereas Robbie is the sort of Romario, Sergio Aguero short bull of a striker, huge thighs, and we haven't seen that sort of striker since Aguero left, really. So I'm really excited to see how that body type, for lack of a better term, manages in this land of giants, as more than one Premier League manager likes to describe him. So yeah. Very excited to see him. I hope he has a great season, and I hope I get to interview him soon, because he's hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And final point on Sunderland, we've got some absolute units at the back, which is always fun. Mukiele, Alderete, Dan Ballard on the bench. I'm excited. Yeah,
Alderete's had a great start as well, hasn't he? I mean, speaking of fellow relegation candidates, Wolves. I mean, they've signed the kind of opposite from Brobby in Rokadare today, keeping Jorgen Strand Larsen as well. So despite that worrying start, 3 losses from 3, you've still got Hwang on the books, still got Kaladzic in the squad as well. At least they do have quite a lot of depth at centre forward. Speaking of centre forwards, though, I mean, the Chelsea situation, I think, is really interesting. I mean, the Nicholas Jackson saga, I mean, that has been one of the most entertaining ones of recent years, I think. Now set for that move to Bayern Munich on loan, seemingly a very good financial deal for Chelsea. Could be collecting up to 70 million euros for him. But Carl, I mean, Marc Guehi recalled from Sunderland, but that Delap injury on the weekend. Joao Pedro has been covering for Cole Palmer in the 10. I mean, if you're a Chelsea fan, would you be a little bit worried going into this Champions League campaign with this striker setup?
That's a very, very good question, and you're very clever to ask me if I was a Chelsea fan, because I was about to give you a snarky answer as a non-Chelsea fan. What, do they need more body? No, as a Chelsea fan, and yeah, I think you look at the way Maresca wants to play, perhaps they are lacking a premium player in that front three in Cole Palmer's absence. However, I think Enzo Maresca is an incredibly intelligent coach, and will find ways to compensate, possibly by getting a little bit more, increasing the set piece threat, or rejigging the midfield and trying to make them a little bit slower in possession. I think can help that way. Nicholas Jackson is, I think, his weaknesses have been talked about too much, and his strengths have been talked about too little. I think he's a very good player, and he would have been of incredible value to a number of clubs, and I'm happy and sad he's going to Bayern Munich, in that, yeah, he's absolutely good enough to play for a club of that sort of level. But also I'm going, oh no, you're Harry Kane's backup. That's a very annoying place to be as a striker, because Harry Kane wants to play every single minute of every single game, because Harry Kane is just obsessed with scoring goals. The fact that the fee, the deal was sort of, it was one thing and it wasn't another thing, and now they've also got this obligation, which is great if you're a Chelsea accountant, and if you're a Bayern accountant, maybe good, because if Harry Kane does eventually start slowing down, that's great. Turns out planes do go backwards, maybe. I have no idea. Very confusing. In the end, I think the Bayern move is good for Nico Jackson, in that he gets to go to a club that's also going to be playing Champions League football, and probably leaves a football environment that decided they don't want, have decided he's surplus the requirements. It's good for Chelsea, because they've managed to get a very, very good deal there for a player that they've very quickly decided isn't in their best interest. And it's good for Bayern Munich, because they've, in short, I thought Bayern Munich were going to get Walter Moder, in the summer. But if you're not going to get him, you may as well get a player of Jackson's quality as well. So, yeah, very confusing for everyone, but also everyone's sort of come out of this a winner. I want to know what Harry Kane thinks.
Yeah, certainly an interesting one. Yeah, it just feels, you can look back to those Spurs days when they just couldn't get in a top quality backup to Kane because of all those reasons that you're saying. But maybe with Kane, older now, maybe they'll rest him for some of the easier Bundesliga
Perhaps
games.
Harry Kane wants to rest up before the World Cup and he wants to relax his back. Does that sound like something Harry Kane wants to do?
Absolutely not.
There
He
you
wants
go.
goals. He wants goals. He's closing in. Well, I think he's got 3 Bundesliga hat-tricks now.
Yep.
I think Gerd Müller got 7. So the goal-scoring rate that he's delivering, I think is going under the radar here. And you look at the absolute pillaging that's gone on in the Bundesliga for every club outside of Bayern, at Leipzig, at Leverkusen, Ten Hag being fired today already, Dortmund losing Jamie Gittins. I don't think on paper there's probably ever been an easier title win for Bayern. So Nicholas Jackson goes over there, perhaps plays 20 games, maybe 10 starts, grabs 10 goals and gets a move to Bayern next year.
I guess he's also an option off the left, isn't he? Off the bench as well. We saw Matis Tell get minutes off the left for Bayern before, but yeah, Kane. 65 Bundesliga goals in the last 2 and a bit years is pretty outrageous. So yeah, going to be a tough one to displace him. Dukes, first of all, what's the poll saying on who's won the transfer window?
Well, it's changing a little bit. Who's had the best transfer window out of? So we've got a new poll up.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had a poll for who's had the best window out of Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, and Villa put in as a surprise mechanism there. And Arsenal are on top by 50%. Surprisingly, Everton behind Chelsea, which I think a lot of Everton fans might disagree with. But guys, let us know in the comments your favourite transfers, what you're expecting to happen before the window, how happy you are with your club, and I'll read them out in the next 15, 20 minutes or so.
I guess speaking of Arsenal, let's get on to them because, a loss in one of the first big title race fixture on the weekend. Obviously, that's Szoboszlai free kick. If you somehow haven't seen that, go and watch it after this stream, ideally.
Just watch Ref Cam on that. The Ref Cam, I think
that's the first iconic Ref Cam of the season, isn't it? Hopefully we'll get a tunnel brawl at some point. But until then, Szoboszlai definitely takes it. Maybe my goal of the season, to be honest. It's going to take some beating that. But Arsenal, some fans were disappointed with the way that Arteta approached the game, but in terms of the way that Arsenal have approached the transfer window, Doogie, can you really fault them? Is there anything that you think they've missed, or do you think they have set themselves up as well as possible to finally win that Premier League trophy?
I think if you're being ultra critical, which I'm not really prepared to be, because I do think they've had a great window, but I think the ultra critic would probably say, did you need to sign Hincapié? Did you need to sign Madueke and instead invest in a real top quality natural left winger? I think that is what the critics would say. But as I'm not prepared to be a critic, as I've already pointed out, I think their window has been fantastic, particularly in terms of defensive depth. That year where Arteta ended up playing Rob Holding for the final 5 games of the season has just done irretrievable damage in his brain. He is preparing for any defensive injury, and they are well covered in that department now.
Do you think that is overcompensation, given that Arsenal have comfortably had the best defence in the league for 2 years now? They have dealt with injuries in that back line without having to get in someone of Hincapié's quality before. Obviously, Mosquera stepped in against Liverpool and I thought did a pretty good job up against what is the scariest attack in the league right now. What do you make of Arteta's continuation to?
Well, I think he slightly looked to the next generation in Mosquera, obviously with being such a young player, and Saliba still, I'd be very surprised if he left, but it's not completely outside of the realms of possibility that a player of his quality would look to go to a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich or somewhere with a guarantee of trophies in the next few years. Hincapié and Calafiori and White and Timber, these are players that can play in a variety of positions, which is what Arteta really values as well. They've now got Zubamendi in midfield. You imagine with Hincapié arriving as well, that allows Lewis Skelly to play in midfield where he's naturally supposed to play. They've still got Mikel Merino to play off the bench, and a lot of Arsenal fans were kind of complaining that he was starting yesterday. I think that was maybe the team selection error if you're looking at that. But having said that, it was, a great goal to win a really poor game in terms of entertainment. It wasn't a thriller. Neither side, I didn't think there was a massive gap between either side. I struggled to stay awake for parts of it on the back of a wedding on Saturday night, and I was looking for more drama to keep me awake. But in terms of Arsenal's window, a lot rests on Gyökeres, I think. I think it was interesting Jamie Carragher making the point in the post-match and maybe even at half-time that he felt that the biggest issue with them last year was not finishing, but actually creativity. But then you've signed Eberechi Eze, you need Odegaard to get back to his previous levels, Saka will be fully fit for an entire year. I think with Liverpool having more changes potentially to their starting 11 than Arsenal, but Arsenal improving their depth massively, I think we could have a really iconic title race. And I have got so much wrong in my predictions so far this season, but me saying, or I think many people did as well, that I wasn't quite sure about Man City being back. I think it's gonna prove to be a two-horse race as it stands. I think Man City have left themselves open at right back and potentially still too much to do in midfield, with Rodri inevitably taking a little while to get back to his best.
Yeah, and I mean, also you speak about Liverpool with all of that change. Man City have, a huge turnover there.
And Czech already injured as well.
Yeah, real shame, real shame. I mean, Carl, on that subject, have you changed your mind about any clubs where they're going to finish in the Premier League based on these first 3 games of the season, and also based on the business that's been done in the last couple of weeks? Have you changed your mind anyway?
I've called on Aston Villa, but we've already discussed that. I think your top 3 are going to be some combination of Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City. I think I've said the gap between the top 3 could be as short as 6 points. I thought it was going to be real. Every team has a obvious weakness or something that you want to get at. Whereas I think the interesting thing for Arsenal is, and the reason why I think Arsenal fans were probably going to come out their feet going, you know what, actually, we're still in this, is that strength in depth of all their areas. They've addressed, to my mind, every single weakness they've had from last season. So you've strengthened your left-sided attacking options and getting Eze. You've strengthened your number 9 options. You've got backup for Saka. You've got a defensive midfielder now who can not only be paired really nicely with Declan Rice, but also give Declan Rice a breather if Declan Rice ever gets tired, which he never seems to do, or get injured, which is fun. So the Arsenal squad is very, very nice. I'm sure if you're playing any form of football game and you are picking Arsenal, you have a bevy of options you can plug in and play regardless of whatever side of football you want. So that's good. Again, I'm right with you, Dougie, in that Pep Guardiola's going to figure out what he needs to do with Manchester City, but I think that happens perhaps after the World Cup. I was really surprised that Rodri played in the Club World Cup. I thought that was perhaps overambitious. Perhaps this is me showing my age, but as far as I'm concerned, when you do your ACL, you shouldn't be playing football for 12 to 14 months, not 9. And I think it might take 12 to 14 months before we see Rodri get to his best there. So that's been fun. This Spurs team is fun and has a very clear and coherent identity. They're young, they want to run. I've really, really enjoyed Pape Sarr in a more advanced position. I think Xavi Simons coming there is going to make Spurs a really lethal threat on the attacking transition. I think the idea of Simons and Kudus as a 2-man step, just running down, is going to be really fun. I am unfortunately quite sad at some of the Premier League clubs that have been pillaged or sold some of their best players. I'm really sad that Crystal Palace couldn't keep all their best pieces together. I'm really sad that Brentford now aren't going to save my fantasy football team. Because, well done for selling Brian Mbeumo and Wissa for the north of 120 million when they're so late in their contracts. However, your replacements are not to that quality. And that might be the difference between you being okay and you being in the relegation mire. Brentford fans, please tell me off and please tell me that things are going on better there. I live in the north, I don't know. So it's little things like that where I'm going, okay, the top 3, the difference between the top 3 is perhaps shorter than I initially planned, and the difference between the bottom 5, I think there's going to be a clumping there. That will be good luck, sir.
Thank you.
It's going to be nerve-wracking for Sunderland fans.
Yeah,
May's going to be hell.
Certainly, a big relegation battle on our hands. Thanks for that round. I feel like you covered almost every club in the league there, Carl. I have had it in my ear, Doogie. I don't know if you've been seeing that there might be a report as to Guehi's situation.
I had a different report. Do you want to just quickly update on Liverpool spending? So we've had an email through from Zinni Boswell, who's a football journalist at Sky, and he says the £125 million move for Isak to Liverpool breaks Liverpool. Liverpool have now broken the transfer record for an English club in one summer. It takes their outlay to more than £446 million, which eclipses Chelsea's record of 434 in summer of 2023. But they have generated £228 million in player sales as well. So their net spend is massive, but it's not never seen before levels, which I thought was interesting. In terms of the Guehi update, I'm looking for Guehi updates and can't see anything on the emails as it stands, but I will keep digging.
Cool. Try the transfer centre. They might have something for
you.
Right,
website first.
We'll see. But at least from what I could gather in my ear, there are potentially some doubts over Guehi still yet to complete his medical, but we will get the official line to you guys as soon as possible. Let us know your thoughts about the conversation we've been having. Are there any moves or business in general over the last 2 weeks that's changed your mind about the title race? Do you still think that Liverpool are going to retain their title? Do you think Arsenal, despite that loss yesterday, are still in a strong position? Doogie, anything?
Oh, well, I've got an update from Carl's employers, The Athletic, which their article is running on the transfer centre. And their report suggests that the deal is at a stumbling block, with Palace struggling to find an adequate replacement. That's as it stands at 5:58, with an hour and 2 minutes before the deadline. So it does look like Marc Guehi's deal to Liverpool is in serious jeopardy. The question I wanted to ask you guys is actually Man United related, because I feel like we kind of skirted over the sort of midfield conundrum, which everyone's been talking about for so long this summer. I mean, Carl, there was speculation about Carlos Baleba earlier this window that maybe felt like one more for next year. Do you think Man United have potentially made a mistake by not prioritising midfield now?
Yes.
Right. Do you?
Sorry. let me elaborate.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let me elaborate. I very, very strongly believe that Manchester United's inability to properly identify, acquire, and build complementary midfields has inhibited season after season after season since Michael Carrick's retirement, for lack of a better term. If you were a Manchester United fan or a Premier League watcher who got tired of the years of unlocking Paul Pogba, one of the reasons for that was they never quite built a midfield around Paul Pogba that they got the best out of him outside of a very short period on interim Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It was Nemanja Matic as your holding number 6, Ander Herrera as your shuttling 8, and Pogba as your on the left of a 4-3-3, which he loved. That was for maybe 3 months on the interim Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Then they go and play Liverpool. It's a boring 0-0. Everyone gets injured, including Ander Herrera, and they go into that international break, and Paul Pogba then starts talking about playing for Real Madrid, because that to me was always when Paul Pogba went, this isn't going to work here, I need to go. So, United are bad at buying central midfielders, I think is a very fair assessment. And when they do buy central midfielders, they very rarely buy them. They buy them in sort of silo signings with very little thought or consideration as to how they interact with the other central midfielders. This has caused loads of money, well, not enough money to be spent, and also the money has been spent. A lot of the players just haven't been able to show off their best abilities. The way Amorim wants his central midfielders to play, as we've seen at Man United and we've seen at Sporting CP, is they have to be out of possession, Simeone-esque, shall we say. Right, so they need to be really, really, really robust out of possession. They're primarily chosen for their athleticism and their tackling ability. They've got to be good in the air. They've got to be good at marshalling large areas of space. They've got to be able to win the ball high up the field, and also when they're retreating. They also, if possible, as a stretch goal, need to be good at long passing to hit the ball into the channels where your wing backs and your number 10s are going for. You say all this, can you name you any United midfielder right now who ticks those boxes?
No,
Probably not.
Exactly.
Really.
So this is a problem for United.
Are you surprised then that there wasn't a plan B to Baleba, and that so much was put towards signing Sesko, where in theory United have a number of players who can at least deputise at centre forward. Højlund, didn't necessarily have to leave despite that, awful season last year. He wanted to stay at the club until that Napoli deal got done.
I am not surprised that Manchester United didn't buy a central midfielder, because I've been covering Manchester United for 5 years now, and I know that Manchester United aren't very good at buying central midfielders. I am disappointed that they've not bought a central midfielder, and I think their lack of central midfield purchase is perhaps the one biggest exclamation mark headline or whatnot. I think that will be the difference between them finishing perhaps in the Conference League spaces, or perhaps pushing towards the Champions League places. I think while I certainly got excited to find out Manchester United were having contact with Baleba via intermediaries, that always seemed a little bit fanciful, if only because, Brighton had sold Moises Caicedo to Chelsea for 110 million. And I didn't think Baleba would get sold for anything cheaper. Whether or not that's true, they should or not, that's up to you. But I thought United could and very much should have been in the market for a central midfielder. If you subscribe to The Athletic, you know that every single summer window I do a series called Shopping for Insert Manager's Name, where I go, here is a football manager at Manchester United, here's how they like to recruit for this position, and based on the type of midfield or the type of striker that they want, here are the type of players they should look at. So we looked at striker, we looked at defensive midfield, I also looked at, goalkeeper. I looked at goalkeeper as well, and I created a list of central midfielders that would suit Amarin's system. Of course, Baleba was number one, but there were other players in there. I mean, there was Lamine Kamara, there's Lucien Agume, there was Stiller, there was Statue who's gone to Leeds. There's Javi Guerrero at Valencia. There's Elliot Anderson who's at Nottingham Forest. Yes, okay. I can totally understand Manchester United's recruitment team or someone going, we didn't have the 100 million, so we're going to kick it down the road until next summer, where Casemiro will probably leave at the expiry of his contract and they will have more money to buy Baleba. My hesitation and objection is, could you not have found 50 million to get someone who can better enable Bruno Fernandes to get forward and join the attack, or someone who can better complement Mainu in the times where the other players are being rested? Because I think the lack of proper midfield recruitment is also having a knock-on effect on Mainu, because when your two defensive midfielder players are Casemiro and Ugarte, one player who's 33 and perhaps cannot cover ground in the way Amarin wants, and one player who, well, has already worked with Amarin, cannot progress the ball the way Amarin wants, that causes stress, tension, or increases the requirement needed for the player next to him. Fernandes is going to play as much as possible because he's the captain, but I think this has caused a difficulty in Mainu and how Mainu's game time will run between now and the end of the season. I mean, it's an hour away from this window, and it looks like Mainu isn't going to leave on loan.
Doesn't look like it.
Which I will leave the comment section to decide if that's a good idea or a bad idea.
Probably a good one for United, given the injuries to Mount and Cunha recently as well. Whether we'll see Bruno move into that forward three at least temporarily. But yeah, I'm in agreement. It does feel like United have maybe missed out on getting a plan B for Baleba there. But yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments below on Man United's transfer window. Doogie.
Yeah, do you want to hear a bit of breaking news?
Okay.
Well, I don't know how dramatic it is, but according to Carve Solokol, Raheem Sterling looks like he's going to be staying at Chelsea.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Which is a disaster for Raheem Sterling personally, obviously. But it's easy to forget that Raheem Sterling's still only 30 years old. And I know he's had a difficult few years, but he probably had, in our recent lifetime at least, at Euro 2020, one of the outstanding tournaments of an England player.
That is the best, to my mind, that is the best individual in terms of game after game after game, collection of performances I've seen one England player do I'm only 34, but I think
in my lifetime as well, I've never seen a tournament.
We spoke about Donnarumma winning player of the tournament. When that was announced at Wembley Stadium, I shouted profusely and I went, that's Sterling's.
Yeah.
I think if England had won that final, I think Sterling would have won player of the tournament because he was phenomenal that tournament.
It was remarkable. And it feels like, I think his son is in Arsenal's academy, so I don't think he wants to leave London, which is totally fair enough. You want to stay close to your family. He seemed like he was close to a move to Fulham, but Carve's reporting, he's got 2 years left on his deal at Chelsea, family settled in London, so his preference would have been to stay in London, but Fulham look like they're signing Kevin from Shakhtar Donetsk. They've also signed Tarek George as well from Chelsea today for around £20 million.
That's a very good deal.
Feels like a very good deal as well. I thought he looked really, really bright in the minutes he played last year, but just an absolute disaster for Raheem Sterling, who's clearly not part of Enzo Maresca's plans. It's one of sort of the saddest stories in English football, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, really tough. And I mean, only this time last year with that loan to Arsenal, I think we were all, I certainly was a massive fan of that loan and the way it worked out under Mikel Arteta. I certainly didn't see it coming. So yeah, there we have it. I mean, there's so many more moves that have happened today that we could go into. I mean, Tarek George to Fulham, you talk about. I mean, we haven't even touched upon Randall Kolo Muani to Tottenham, Carl. I mean, is this a move you're a fan of?
Is it done?
I think it pretty much is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's official, but yeah.
This one's fascinating in that Kolo Muani is among a collection of strikers who feels like they haven't quite kicked on since the Qatar World Cup. Is that fair to say, Dougie?
I think it is fair to say. Yeah, I mean, he had that moment that will always be remembered with Emi Martinez. But he had a decent loan spell at Juve last year, and I think there was so much talk that he was going to go there, but this league sort of collapsed.
Decent. And
I mean, 8 goals in half a season in Serie A, and I think he was also very keen to go back to Juventus, but then this Lois Openda deal to Juve then kind of cut off that possibility.
And the thing about Juventus right now, and particularly Juventus' strikers, is no one's quite sure if you're a good striker or a bad striker because of your own qualities, or if because Juventus are in a very dysfunctional state of flux. They should be Champions League ever presence, and yet they can't really quite figure out what football team they want to be and what style of football they want to play, and that's causing a lot of problems, particularly in attacking roles. At least that's my sort of outside-in opinion with Juventus. I think Colomani certainly had promise and looked very, very promising in 2022. How has he developed and addressed those weaknesses since then? Hasn't really been to a level that I thought was pleasing. However, I mean, in this Tottenham Hotspur team that has a very clear identity of how they want to play, has so many threats in transition in particular, I think, going from a Juventus team that, I mean, I don't think Juventus has the attacking firepower as Tottenham Hotspur right now, which is a ridiculous sentence for me to say in 2025. Well, ridiculous sentence for me to say, but it's 2025 and football is all topsy-turvy now. So if he does arrive, very, very interested to see. It does raise some, I mean, my eyebrows slightly going up about, like, how injured is Dominic Solanke now? Because he should be the guy. And the fact that Tottenham are in the market for further strikers indicates perhaps Solanke's body, Solanke can't trust his body in the same way that he used to, which is really difficult. And I think, perhaps, I don't want to say we've already seen the best of Solanke, because I think he's a really, really nice football player. I think he's a great human being as well, and he's taken the long route to the top after Chelsea's academy. But if Colomani can come in, he, in theory, is good cover. I'm pulling a face again.
I mean, at least before we went live, I think the deal that I was seeing that it was a straight loan. So I guess it's not necessarily an ominous sign of a lack of faith in Dominic Solanke's fitness.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. These loans, do you think this is World Cup year related, or do you think it's just everyone's not got as much money as they would like to have related?
I think, I mean, I guess I think especially with forwards, especially those who are kind of around their mid-20s, there's maybe a little bit of a hesitance to put a lot of money down for a forward who isn't a guarantee. I mean, I guess we have seen a lot of money put down for the likes of Automada and Sesko this summer, but maybe in the case of Kolo Muani, I think PSG were probably asking for quite a lot. I can't remember the exact figure, but I think that was potentially a stumbling block with his move to Juve. But I mean, the fact that it's a World Cup year for sure must play a part. I think Muani, would have been a starter at Juve for sure, but the way things have panned out, I guess the fact that he can play on the left as well. I don't know, I kind of fancy him under Thomas Frank. I mean, maybe it's a bit simplistic, but I feel like Thomas Frank and attackers just go so well together.
Decent transition as well. Yeah, sure. I've got an update from Rob Dorset about Marc Guehi. He says, I'm told by 2 sources at Crystal Palace that Marc Guehi will still join Liverpool even after the Igor transfer collapsed. But the fact of the matter is that Palace is struggling to find a replacement for Guehi. Extraordinary developments is what he's just tweeted as well. So Guehi, with 50 minutes to go until the window slams shut, still very much up in the air.
That one feels a bit more, my interpretation of that is Guehi's in the building for Liverpool. Palace don't necessarily have that person, so one's going to get sorted, the other one doesn't. We do know, obviously, when everything closes, slam shut, however you want to describe it, there is like a little bit of a long tail. So if you're in the building and there's a printout there, you do have a little bit more time to dot the I's and cross the T's. And then, of course, someone's going to emerge at about 7:30 to remind you that the transfer window in Turkey is not open. It's not finished yet. Which is always the asterisk we got to remember.
For sure. I mean, given the fact that Marc Guehi's transfer has been talked about since the season finished in May, for it to come down to the final 50 minutes of this earlier window closing as well, 4 hours earlier than usual, is pretty crazy. It's a strange development, really, but it's just a classic transfer saga.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really think of a more dramatic deadline day, especially involving 2 Premier League clubs, such an important player in Guehi. I mean, we're probably going to be wrapping up quite soon, Carl, but I mean, to put your fan of an opposition club hat on again, I mean, how would you be feeling if you're a Palace fan right now? I mean, the highs of the 2 Wembley trophies this summer, Eze gone on very good terms. I mean, Guehi playing up until the final day, scoring that great goal last night. I mean, where would your emotions be right now if you're a Palace fan?
I think if talking to the Palace fans in my life, hi Ruben, I will say they are a little bit downbeat about the reality of sort of the modern football hierarchy, in that if you are a team outside of the top 6 or top 8 now, shall we say, if you do have a year that can perhaps be the best year in your living history, or history in general, unfortunately the treadmill starts. And once the treadmill starts, it gets faster and faster and faster, and unfortunately certain players leave. I think Bournemouth fans have also talked about how, oh my God, it's amazing, we're on the cusp of entering European football, and then you go, oh God, people will buy their entire back 4, if not back 5, is gone as well. So there's that discomfort of, you've probably seen the best Crystal Palace team for a little bit already. The good thing for Crystal Palace, I think that quite a few Crystal Palace fans are holding on to, is they've got Oliver Glasner. And he's a hell of a coach, and if you want any manager to put your faith in to finding solutions, even with suboptimal scenarios, I'd put it into Oliver Glasner. I think the way Crystal Palace played against Aston Villa yesterday was superb. I think the way they can lock up teams defensively is very, very, very good. Maybe if you want to be a meanie Debbie Downer, I'll go, are they still going to be able to have that computation and problem-solving ability when the Conference League starts and they're playing 2 games a week? But also, I've just said I believe in Ole Glasner, so I believe in Ole Glasner. I think Crystal Palace will be fine to good, but perhaps not as good as they were last season, which is a bit unfortunate. But I mean, we're not worried about them in the same way that perhaps I'd be worried about Brentford or West Ham.
It just feels like this summer's been another sort of classic proof of like the football food chain in action. Any club that has a good year, even throughout Europe, whether it's Stuttgart a few years ago, or Leipzig or Leverkusen more recently, or Girona in Spain a few years ago, they all get their best players picked off. And if you don't do that, particularly as a Premier League club like Newcastle or Villa, who haven't really sold their stars in the last few years, you end up with a scenario where your squad is too good to let go, but you haven't sold anyone to bring anyone else in. So you'll kind of get hamstrung by PSR as well. So I think we'll carry on seeing it over the next few years as well, because it is the way to kind of make yourself a little bit more nimble in the transfer market. But as Carl says, it's pretty brutal for the likes of Brentford, Palace, Wolves this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a transfer window it has been. That's all we have time for on the Sky Mobile transfer show today, and all we have time for the summer. Thanks so much for watching us throughout the summer. We'll see you back here in January. Dukes, thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming back as well.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully see you soon. Remember that with all the transfers going on between clubs this summer, it's never been easier to switch your mobile network to Sky Mobile. All you need to do is text PAC, P-A-C, to 65075. That's 65075, and Sky Mobile will do the rest. Between now and the end of the window, you can check out all the latest updates on the Sky Sports website, on Sky Sports News YouTube, where there will be more live streams, and of course on Sky Sports News itself. Once again, thanks for joining us throughout the summer and today, and we will see you next time.